Hey guys, so for this video, I'm going to be doing a movie review of Godzilla Minus Zero. I think that was the name. I thought it was like Minus One. I don't know. I'm probably wrong either way. I did not realize this movie was going to come out till like beginning of last year, or not beginning, middle of last year. I knew that they were probably going to do a legendary Godzilla movie. After Godzilla versus Kong. And so, yeah, but apparently this is from the, original studio maker, the studio that originally made Godzilla. And so, I decided to go see it, in theaters. And, honestly, I was not disappointed. I actually did enjoy this movie fairly well. More so, I think, than pretty much all the recent ones, except for maybe Godzilla King of Monsters. I enjoyed that one a lot. Yeah, let's kind of get into the movie, and then I can give my thoughts along the way. The movie starts in 1945. It's near the end of World War II, and there is the kamikaze pilot. His name is Kyoichi Shakishima. God, I probably butchered that, sorry. So he lands on a Japanese base on Odo Island. Long story short, he was a kamikaze pilot who decided not to kamikaze. And so the mechanics kind of are sus right away. They're suspicious right away of him. Because he supposedly had this mechanical error that caused him to land on this island. But ultimately, Godzilla shows up and kills all of the garrison except for Kyoichi and one other dude. So Kyoichi was told to shoot Godzilla with his plane, or his machine gun on his plane, but he kind of freezes up and is ultimately knocked out. And wakes up, and there's another guy who survives who, blames him for what happened because he wasn't an idiot and shot a machine gun at this giant-ass monster. It probably would have killed him. So, anyways, he ultimately makes it back to Tokyo, only to discover his parents were killed during the bombing, and so he's at kind of his house, his home, and he's got racked with guilt because he was supposed to essentially kill himself during the war, but he didn't. And I think it was I think he reads a letter, and I think if I remember correctly, his parents begged him not to kill himself, even though was a kamikaze pilot. So I think that was one of the reasons I think he ultimately didn't, and so, but he ends up finding a woman, or a woman finds him, and an orphan child, and essentially they end up living in his house, and he ends up supporting them, and he makes money as a minesweeper, which is the fun job of going and detonating all the mines left over from the war, in the bay, or, in the, what is it, sea, whatever. So yeah, there's that fun job. It pays well, but there's a good chance of you getting blown up, so that it takes place over a few years, and then Godzilla shows up yet again, and we see that he's gotten bigger, and he's mutated because of the nuclear test that the Americans have been doing. And he's heading for Japan. The U.S. refuses to help because they're having tensions with Soviet Unions, and they're afraid that, any military action near Japan will make, the Soviet Union jumpy, and so they offer them some decommissioned Japanese Navy vessels, and a prayer. Essentially, they're useless as fuck, of course. Japanese government, of course, doesn't tell the people because they don't want to cause a panic, according to them. Kyochi's vessel is told to stall Godzilla until a warship can arrive. So they essentially are using the mines that they have picked up to throw them at essentially Godzilla to try to, kill him. They were able to get one into Godzilla's mouth, and they're able to actually detonate it, but of course, he starts regenerating. And the warship arrives and immediately gets destroyed. Godzilla proceeds to go to Ginza, where Kyochi lives. He's able to get there in time to find his girlfriend, but Godzilla uses his atomic breath and destroys half the city, including Kyochi's girlfriend. So yeah, it's not going well. So of course the Japanese military is useless, and so the citizens come up with a plan to kill Godzilla because the military isn't doing anything. They plan to use tanks to drag Godzilla down to the deepest part of the ocean, hoping that the pressure will crush him, and then if that doesn't work, drag him back up using these balloons to decompress him, fast, so that it will hopefully kill him. I actually thought that idea was kind of interesting, though. I thought it was a good idea. Definitely better than just shoot, enough guns at him to hopefully you kill him. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting plan, and so they are able to get some destroyers, and Kyochi finds the mechanic from the beginning of the movie, and they kind of resolve their issues, and the mechanic makes modifications on the on a plane, experimental plane that they have been working on, to use during the war, but it never happened. So he starts using, he's going to use that plane to kamikaze into Godzilla's mouth, essentially. So he kind of has to come to terms with having to actually go kill himself. And so he leaves his daughter in the care of his neighbor, who, she's kind of like, I would say kind of like his babysitter. She helped raise the kid, essentially. And so I would say also kind of a mother to the child. And so he kind of leaves her in the care of his neighbor because he thinks she's going to die. And then they're able to submerge Godzilla, but he survives the plunge, and as they are pulling him up, the cable breaks, and the boats that they have, that it just isn't powerful enough to drag Godzilla back up. And so, of course, there was this guy who he's like one of the younger generations, I guess. He wasn't actually involved in a war, and the people on his team, they were actually like veterans of the war, and they didn't want him to be involved in the war because they don't want him to have to experience that trauma. But of course the young guy wants to be involved, which you can see both sides, but ultimately the young guy is the one who is able to round up a bunch of vessels, and they use essentially brute force to drag Godzilla back up to the surface. Yeah, and of course Godzilla is still somewhat alive. He's getting ready, I think, to use his atomic breath yet again, but Kyochi is able to kamikaze the plane into his mouth, and essentially the atomic breath, I think, implodes on Godzilla and he blows up. And then, of course, they had the big reveal that Kyochi is alive because they were smart enough to put an ejection seat into the plane, which apparently they hadn't before then. So yeah, the mechanic that, who hated him at the beginning of the movie ultimately saves his life from doing exactly what he, was shamed for at the beginning. I thought that was, that was an interesting kind of, that was an interesting, like, I guess, plot line. Anyways, so, he's alive, he is reunited with his daughter, and, the neighbor is pissed at him. She starts yelling at him for almost killing himself, which is also interesting because beginning of the movie, she shamed him for not, dying essentially in the war, but now she's pissed that he almost died. So another great development. And of course, they learn that his girlfriend is still alive. She's in the hospital. She is like missing an eye, and then they pan to her like neck. And I thought ultimately she's like regenerating, because it looked like there is something like growing. So I thought that maybe she'd been affected with something that ultimately involved Godzilla, but or she's experienced radiation sickness because of the atomic, breath. So I'm not sure what exactly that was supposed to indicate. And then, of course, the last shot is chunk of Godzilla starting to regenerate, so of course. But, yeah, they've been in talks of a sequel. The director wants a sequel, and I guess Toho wants a sequel as well to this. So, I would love one. It'd be interesting. So, my thoughts overall on the film. I love the character development. It gave the characters more depth. Hyochi, he goes from being scared of dying to, I guess, being comfortable with dying, being brave enough to die, to save those that he loves and cares about, to stop this, like, tragedy from happening again. So, this great development mechanic from the, beginning goes from blaming him for not essentially dying during the war to helping save him. And so then the neighbor, like I said, goes from shaming him for not dying to being upset for him almost dying. And then essentially the current generation, the survivors, I guess, of the war, they no longer want to kind of be cannon fodder for the government. They no longer want to go die for a government that doesn't care about them, because they refuse to actually provide them with, like, good, armor and just weapons to help protect them. So essentially, the government has been treating them like cannon fodder, and they're tired of it. So kind of got that in the movie as well. So continuing themes throughout the movie, there was like a, big theme on trauma. So Kyochi, he experiences PTSD because of what happened on the island, and he has nightmares about Godzilla attacking again. And there's this scene where he wakes up and he's like confused, and he's not sure what is real and what isn't, and he starts I don't say screaming, but just starts asking his girlfriend if she's real or not. And so kind of this real trauma that he keeps experiencing throughout the movie because of everything that's happened. And then the girl, the child that he helps raise, she's like, we see the trauma of war because of all the orphans that are created from it. So not only her, but also Hyochi, his parents died during the war. So we get to see this, like, really see the terrible effect of war on, I guess, the society. There's a lot of kind of like political, political messaging, I guess. Essentially, in this movie, the military's useless and doesn't care about civilian lives, so sometimes civilians have to essentially protect themselves. And then, of course, kind of like I've talked about a little bit, effects of war, we see how the town is like in ruins. So there's like some of the buildings are literally just, they're just ruins at this point, and so we see them slowly start kind of rebuilding and just finding ways to live in the ruins, and it's kind of heartbreaking but also inspirational. And we also see kind of even though the war ends, it's still affecting people, because like I said, he was a minesweeper, and so there are still bombs there that could kill people even though the war has ended. And even now that's still a thing, there are still bombs that are being discovered, which is depressing. And so, of course, parents being killed and children being orphaned, PTSD, and the fear that it will happen again. So just these really acknowledging kind of the trauma of war in this movie. This Godzilla was unique, apart from probably the original Godzilla movie, in that I think this was the creator's intended purpose for Godzilla. He was supposed to be the metaphor for like the atomic bomb, atomic war, and just, war in general, because we get the scene where he uses his atomic breath, and then half the city's like disintegrated. We see that, and then like the resulting mushroom cloud, it literally looks like an atomic bomb has been dropped. And so obviously that was supposed to be a metaphor for what happened. And so I do think, because originally the creator he actually did experience the bombings, and so I feel like this was Godzilla in this one is just pure terror. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of this movie. So a little bit behind the scenes, kind of explaining a little bit and pretty much confirming also what I thought. Director said that the worldwide anxiety and government unreliability during the COVID pandemic, because this kind of was developed during that period, is one of his major inspirations for the story. So a lot of distrust of the government stems from that. It also explores the theme of anti-war, trauma, hope, guilt, and redemption, like I mentioned. And Godzilla was supposed to symbolize the Japanese perspective of nuclear holocaust during the time, World War II, and pretty much similar to, like I said, the original Godzilla movie. So essentially that's what I got. So the creator was able to convey this well in the movie. So he was successful in that. So apparently, the film had a budget under 10% of that from the previous Godzilla movie, Godzilla vs. Kong. Director said that the budget was below $15 million, so it had such a small budget, but it looked really good for that. So I was impressed. And so some of the receptions for the movie, according to Hollywood Reporter, the American film critics liked the movie because of the director's impressive tiny budget visuals, its touching human drama, and the usage of the kaiju metaphor for social commentary. So I enjoyed that as well. Definitely better than a lot of these blockbuster movies that really are just action and no real message behind it. Apparently it did very well on Rotten Tomatoes, 98%, from 153 critics. And the consensus read, with engaging human stories anchoring the action, Godzilla Minus One is one kaiju movie that remains truly compelling between the scenes of mass destruction. I did feel like the scenes with the mass destructions had purpose. They weren't just there to be there. So Kevin Mahir, reviewing the film for The Times, deemed that Japanese have effectively humiliated Hollywood by delivering the best mega monster movie since Peter Jackson's King Kong in 2005, and noted that the average Hollywood Godzilla movie cost around $200 million and looked worse than this. That I don't really agree with. I think the Godzilla movies do look good. They just can be very lacking in substance, I guess. So, but I do agree that they kind of put the, Hollywood Godzilla movies to shame, or even mega monster movies to shame. Peter Schley of the Japanese Times also criticized the characters, calling them less impressive in one note compared to the visuals, adding that much of the script, like the rousing speech near the film's conclusion, where a former Navy commander urges his men to stand and fight, is eye-rolling, inducing stuff. I do agree that there are scenes where it was so obvious they're trying to be like so inspirational that was kind of cheesy, but I mean, I think it's better than the scene in Independence Day. That scene was so like on the nose, I guess. So it was kind of cheesy, but it didn't really ruin the film for me. In his review of the South China Morning Post, James Marsh noted that while some criticism has been directed towards the film pushing a pro-military agenda, the protagonists are united in vehement criticism of the government, which pressures so many ordinary citizens into wasting their lives for a questionable cause. I don't know how anybody would call this pro-military unless they literally think that any movie that involves the military is pro-military. So, yeah, this is not pro-military at all. I didn't get the sense. This movie got a lot of praise from a lot of people, a lot of directors, including the co-director of Shin Godzilla, Garth Edwards, the director of the Godzilla movies, the legendary Godzilla movies. Michael Daughtry, I think he did Godzilla vs. Kong, and Del Toro and Edgar Wright. A lot of well-respected directors loved the movie. The One Piece creator also loved it, which I thought was kind of funny. And then Sam Williamson from Collider attributes the film's box office success to its low budget. And this was kind of depressing to me, kind of dampened some of my joy of this. He said that Japan's labor laws incentivize studios to keep costs low at the expense of the cast and crew. So one of the actors stated that Japan lacks unions for actors and filmmakers, which brings a low quality environment with long hours and low wages, and rise to exploitation. And so that kind of was kind of depressing. But if you're just looking at the movie story-wise, I actually did enjoy it. So there's a lot, but yeah, I'll probably watch it again just because it was enjoyable enough the first time, and there are probably a few things I missed. So, but yeah, that was my review of Godzilla Minus Zero. So if you want to go, if you're questioning to see it, if you're a Godzilla fan, go see it because I think you'll enjoy it. But that was my review. So if you did like this video, give it a like, subscribe to get notification for all the videos I'll be doing. You guys have a nice night. Stay safe out there, and talk to you later.